Those first couple weeks across Ohio were far rougher than I could ever have imagined. I must have packed enough things in my backpack to get me around the entire world, let alone across Ohio. Every joint in my body and every muscle was screaming for relief after the first 100 miles. I remember my knees were swollen that big, and by the time I got to Athens, Ohio, on the east side of the state, I was ready to give it up. I knew that there's no way I could make it if I hurt that much. Well, I stayed there for a couple weeks, got over a few of the aches and pains, and then hobbled on my way down the road. I decided that I'll go to West Virginia, and there I'll quit. Make it look like at least I tried. Well, when I got to Belpre, Ohio, which is right on the Ohio River, and it's the last town before you cross the bridge into West Virginia, I went into the mayor's office to get a signature in my logbook, which I do through every town and village that I pass through. And there, the mayor gave me this key. And he was so proud. And I felt, oh boy, I can't give up now, not after somebody's giving me the key to their city. So I thought to myself, I'll go on a little bit more, maybe to Washington, D.C. And then there I will give up for sure. Well, this key got me through that first major challenge in my walk. And I also found out, too, that it had another use. It was great for opening up pop bottles. Well, on my way to Washington, D.C., I was to meet a special person who would typify very much the spirit that I met in people all around the world. I was crossing through the Shenandoah Valley in Northern Virginia very early in the morning, and there was a kind of a fog and a mist still in the air that morning. And I heard this voice calling out to me, "Yoo-hoo, yoo-hoo, young man!" And I looked up, and there, in a little house on the top of a big hill, was this little old lady with very white hair. She was standing there waving at me as if trying to get my attention. And then she goes, "Young man, have you had any breakfast?" And I looked up at her and I said, "No, I haven't." And I hadn't either, and I was very hungry. I hadn't eaten for at least a day. And then she kind of stomped her foot on the floor as if though she was giving me a directive. And she goes, "Well, you come up here right now and you eat some." And so I went up there because I felt if I didn't, she was going to call the sheriff on me or something. And she hustled me into the kitchen and she whipped up this big breakfast and she stuffed me all full of good food. And later on, I went out on the front porch and was getting ready to leave. I put my big pack back on and I was standing there and looking down at her and I said, "Ma'am, why did you have me come up here and eat breakfast? I'm a stranger and you don't know me." She was very shy, and she looked out over the valley as if she was collecting her thoughts for a moment. And then she looked up at me, and I'll never forget. She goes, "When I was a little girl, my mother used to always read to me from the Bible, and she used to tell me that heaven sends angels to you disguised as men to test your charitableness. And if you fail the test, you may not get to go to heaven." And then she got a little red in the face, as if she was embarrassed at something. And she goes, "I'm 89 years old now, and my eyesight's not so good. And when I looked out the screen door this morning, I saw this very tall figure coming through the woods. And I could feel my heart starting to beat very rapidly, because nobody walks through the forest that early in the morning. And then as I watched you getting closer, I saw this big thing on your back, and I thought, oh, those are wings. This must be one of those angels sent to test me." Of course, what she saw was my backpack. And then she goes, "I'm just too darn old now to blow my chance at heaven. There was no way I was going to let you go by, because I may never get to feed another angel again." Well, I had to laugh. And when I walked away from her cabin that morning and down to the road, I had a really warm feeling inside. Not only did I have a good breakfast in me, but I also knew that, that maybe I wasn't an angel, but surely she was. And as I was to go around the world, I was to find a lot more angels just like her. As my journey pulled me away from that kind lady's cottage and surrounded me with settings that seemed out of heaven itself, I realized how close to and dependent upon Mother Nature we really are. At last, I reached the Atlantic Ocean, and I dreamed, like I suppose everybody does, about what lay on the opposite shore thousands of miles to the east. I knew what was on this side. There were indeed so many friendly angels all around me, waiting to share their lives with me, even in New York City. By walking, I was exposing myself to people on the streets, and, you know, they all seemed to have something to share or a story to tell. Except for this very little angel in Boston. He just gave me this look. As the sun rose on my last day in America before flying to Ireland, I felt a great love for this country of mine, yet I was more eager than ever to discover the treasures that I knew lay beyond these shores.